if you quote unquote book for heat over time, you will get that payoff.
And that could possibly be your payoff. Maybe you will get to see MJF shaved bald. Happy long weekend Monday, and welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Diagnosis. Here to talk about the last week of pro wrestling. Plenty to talk about, maybe too many things to talk about. But I want to start with a subject of how wrestling just needs some real bad guys these days, some real heels. Before we get there, though, I like to go listen to some clips from other podcasts over the past week. We're going to start with the Coach and Bro show, with Russo talking about how people come up to him about the Attitude Era and how they're having a hard time watching this era.
Verbatim. Laying out everything that happened in the Attitude Era. How'd you do this? How'd you do that? The cement truck, the this, the that, verbatim. I can't tell you how many people. And then what followed that was, man, I just can't watch it anymore.
I bring this up for different reasons. One, I feel like people bring up the memories of pro wrestling in the past because they are just that memorable. And it's not even about some of the moments, it's about the characters making the moments iconic for so long in life that we remember them. And I do feel like pro wrestling does a bad job of doing that these days. But I think a reason for that is there's not enough true bad guys out there, true heels in wrestling anymore, where you want to see these things done to them. You want to see them covered with a beer truck because they're just so nauseating to watch, like the corporation was. And it's funny because anyone that knows anything about wrestling knows that Jim Cornette and Vince Russo hate each other, but they do try and book similarly, which we're going to go over here because Jeff Jarrett was talking about Cornette booking on his show.
I think almost everybody listening to this knows the type and the style of wrestling that Jim Cornette really values and he enjoys. And for the record, I think a lot of our audience, myself included, enjoy that style as well. But it's not the style that's being presented necessarily on WWE or AEW because everybody's going to put their own spin on things. And
yeah, of course, everyone's going to put their own spin on things. But I think there's stuff in pro wrestling past that worked, that still would work. And Jeff Jarrett's going to go into that and how you can still get heat on a hill to drive a feud or a story.
So I think the style that will say Cornette or whatever it may be, booking for heat, I think, that's why I was going with it. I think there's a lot of lost art in that if you, there's no doubt it can still be done. If you quote unquote book for heat over time, you will get that payoff. I think in a lot of ways, MJF.
And yeah, he brings up MJF, which is a great person to bring up. I do think MJF is one of the few real heels these days where you want to see him get shaved bald. That's what sells an event. Even though I don't love the angle overall, I still think it works only because MJF plays that character to want to be hated. And that could possibly be your payoff. Maybe you will get to see MJF shaved bald.
But booking for heat is something that I believe to this day will reap a ton of benefits. And that's why I think that's what Cornette, that's how he would book more for heat. Because the old saying goes, and I still think it's very true, heels draw money.
And Jeff Jarrett would know he loved to be a heel and he loved to have heat. Maybe a little too long and too much sometimes in Jeff Jarrett's case. But what he says at the end there, heels draw money, I do still believe you want to see that heel get his ass kicked. And as much differences as Vince Russo and Jim Cornette apparently have, even though I think it's more one-sided than anything, Russo agrees. And he makes a really good point why the modern wrestlers don't seem to want to be real heels.
You know what it is? Ripshot? The modern generation, here's what it is. The modern generation want to be liked. They want to be liked. That's why they do what they do on social media, and it's all the personal pictures, and it's their real people. People just want to be liked.
This is actually a fascinating opinion from Russo here to me, because social media causes a lot of problems in all of our lives, in society in general, but even in pro wrestling, it does seem that way, that people just want to be so liked on social media, like my pictures, look at my life. I want to be popular online. How then are they able to be real heels then? And that is probably why we have this conundrum where the bad guys still go on social media and either whine about something or try to be popular, or they just want to be the cool heel in pro wrestling who's not really completely booed because they're still cool. WWE can't even book Gunther right now, which could still be a good heel too, but they've had him cower to Cody Rhodes after supposedly being the career ender. And I've said that from Gunther's point of view, it doesn't make sense, but Coach actually brought up from Cody's point of view, it doesn't really make sense either.
And then Cody comes out, and I know he got choked out the week before. But he says, get in here and sign it. He goes, whoa. I'm not signing that until you do A, B, C, and D. Vince, I was always taught, if you're the champion, isn't the most important thing to stay champion as long as you possibly can?
Yeah, the whole feud makes no sense. Cody, the champion, is the one driving force wanting to defend his title against Gunther, not Gunther, who came over to SmackDown on a deal from Paul Heyman because he wants a title shot at Cody, but he's the one acting afraid of Cody, and he's the one that wants all these terms in a contract. I feel like they're going for making Gunther an annoying heel that wants to be annoying about signing a contract, wants things his way, but I don't really think it fits what we've seen from Gunther as a persona, because he should be the person that is fine with ending careers. Why not end Cody's and become champion? And it brings up more good points about this very subject.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about baby faces doing heel things and heel doing baby faces thing. And we see that all the time. We see that all the time, Coach. And I don't understand it because, I'm still actively writing, and I'm writing the same way now I was writing in 1999. Like, nothing has changed. It still works. When you're at these events, they know who to boo for and who to cheer for. When you got to get heat on the heel, you put extra heat on the heel.
But yeah, there is a lot of this in all of wrestling, but specifically in WWE a lot, where the babyface is doing heel things and the heel is doing babyface things, and you're left very perplexed as to why this is happening, and that is why the Gunther and Cody Rhodes feud sucks. I mean, it already sucks because both people are just very boring in that feud. But then you want to book it this way where it doesn't even make logical sense. Just bad. And it is why, a lot of us have concerns about how WWE is going to book Trick Williams when he is the guy that I think really could be a huge superstar. But can WWE get him to that level? That is very doubtful when you see the way that they book things.
This Trick Williams, this freaking dude oozes charisma, bro. He's got charisma pouring out of every orifice in his freaking body. You watch what they do with him, then you come talk to me. I'm not talking about a guy going over and getting himself over with the way he looks in his promos. That's him. That's him. You tell me if they ever take that to the next level.
So I believe they're already doing it, as in wasting
the gingerbread man.
And I do agree with this too. I think Trick Williams has done more to get himself over than any creative has done for him so far, both in NXT and now on the main roster especially. We're going to move on to a few other things before I get to my rankings for wrestling TV shows from last week. AEW did great at this Double or Nothing pay-per-view with ticket sales, one of their best events in the US, I think, gate-wise. But in general, Dynamites are still struggling, maybe now more than ever, really struggling to sell tickets, unfortunately. MJF was on Ariel Helwani last week. He's one of the people in wrestling that I do think are one of the better heels to watch. I think it's him and Logan Paul. They're really the only two people that are fine with being hated, and both are booed and hated for different reasons. You know, some wrestling fans just don't respect Logan Paul, but that adds to his heel persona, and that's why it works. But I think even on the podcast, MJF went on to be honest, you know, throwing people like Malachi Black under the bus for people that didn't want to be in AEW and make it work, just wanted to get back to the WWE.
I think it's pretty obvious that that's Malachi Black, but I don't know the guy like on a personal level. Do I think he's a bad guy? No. Do I think he was a mark for like wanting to have his, I need my Mania moment? Like, yeah. And there were a couple guys like that.
Which I did find funny from MJF. But he also, you know, brought up some points about why AEW really could be the best alternative to WWE right now, especially because WWE is floundering right now.
Right now, wrestling fans are a little bit disenfranchised with WWE and TKO. And again, there are plenty of people on that roster that I'm big fans of. There are plenty of people in that office that I'm big fans of. But it is allowing people to finally, if they've not taken that leap yet, to be like, okay, I've been drinking Diet Coke. Let me try Pepsi. So now people are trying Pepsi and they're going, not bad.
There's two different things from this interview, though. With him talking a lot about WWE, people are like, why does he have to use WWE to make his points for AEW? Why should he mention WWE so much? Well, because they're second, and I think they should be mentioning WWE. When you're in first place in something, why mention the people behind you? Why bring any attention to them? And sometimes WWE does bring attention to AEW, regardless, when they shouldn't. But yeah, AEW being the person behind, the people behind, the company behind WWE, yeah, mention them. Knock them when they're down. Right now, WWE is down. But I feel like AEW and people in AEW continue to count on how AEW has the best wrestling. It's where the best wrestle. This has been their saying for years, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't grew their audience. Their ticket sales are actually down. And I'm not saying they have to copy the WWE or be WWE light, but it needs better structure. You know, you can't just be where the best wrestle and expect that is how you're going to sell these tickets to your TV shows, bring up your TV ratings, because clearly that is not happening. And I do have my doubts that Tony Khan alone doing the booking can ever bring AEW to these new heights, because, you know, yeah, we see that Dynamite has been struggling to sell tickets again this year. Some of them even worse than last year. And last year was like their worst year of selling tickets to their TV shows. And they keep wanting more people to come over from the WWE, which sometimes can work, sometimes can. It's going to depend on the booking. MJF saying he's good with the New Day coming over.
Would you like to see New Day come over to AEW?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what their contract situation is.
At some point.
But, you know, whenever they are legally allowed to come over, I think that those are guys that would be incredible additions to the AEW roster. They're both crazy talented. They're both massive stars. And they're both guys that know their worth, which to me is the most impressive thing.
And I do agree with all of this. I do think New Day are good stars still who can bring something to AEW, but will the booking be there? Or will they just be someone else getting lost in the sauce in a huge roster? I don't know. It's a lot. Let's go into my rankings from last week. I'm going to be quick, though. Only 7 to rank this week because there was no collision. TNA Impact still in last place. It's just not a good show. It might not be a show I continue to add in my rankings because I don't really know if there's a reason for me to keep watching. I don't think there's anything going on in TNA where it's like, you must see this. Not even Mike Santana's title reign, which is the best thing they have going. But they've been booking him in a way where the general managers are getting more screen time with his storyline than he is. It's more about the general managers, I feel like, than Mike Santana. But at least he was able to finally defend his title against Steve Maclin after that event couldn't happen at a pay-per-view because Maclin got injured. TNA is just not a good watch. In sixth place this week, I put SmackDown. I didn't even do a review for SmackDown over the weekend like I have been doing, because to me it's like, why? If they're not putting in the effort to make it even somewhat interesting to watch, why would I want to then talk about the entire show? And a lot of Triple H's booking and the current WWE booking are these little short backstage segments every week to slowly try and tell a story, to slowly try and tease a story. But it comes to a point where it's like, either shit or get off the pot and go somewhere, you know? That's what I feel like is happening with a lot of this MFT stuff backstage, where they've been teasing that Shinsuke Nakamura is going to be able to get Tama Tonga away from the MFTs. They're now teasing this possible relationship between Royce Keys and the MFTs. These things have been happening for like 2 months, I feel like, or close to it. And yet I feel like it's gone nowhere. And then at this show, Shinsuke gets beat up by Tama Tonga in the end. So he's going to stay with the MFT. So like, what were these little segments each week for? Like, I feel like this is Triple H's way of saying, hey, look, I can still tell stories, but if they're not going anywhere, what's the point? One of the only things on SmackDown I've been talking about that I do like is, of course, the Sami Zayn character, you know, devolving into a heel again, even though he's talking about his ride or die fans and how he hasn't changed. The fans have changed, and it's kind of true so far in the storyline. And the truth in the storyline is also what works, but there's also this obvious jealousy with Sami Zayn and the Golden Boy Cody Rhodes, which set up the main event between the two of them, which Cody did end up winning even though Gunther came out, but it ends up with Gunther choking Cody out. Sami Zayn could make the save, but we kind of cemented Sami Zayn's heel turn when he did not make the save, just turned and walked away and watched Gunther choke out Cody. So I think that was still good for Sami Zayn. I'm interested in where they are going with that character, but everyone else on the show is not very interesting to me. They did finally have a Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes match on the show. Hayes interrupting Trick Williams. There's so much history between these two, especially on NXT, and yet I feel like we're not diving into this from a story standpoint. It was just kind of an interruption. And then that led to a match, and then that led to Ricky Saints costing Carmelo Hayes the match. So we're still mostly going towards a Carmelo and Ricky Saints feud, with maybe Trick Williams thrown in. But I shouldn't be surprised. SmackDown couldn't even do a feud on the Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes history and make it interesting without it being random with Pat McAfee. So why would I have faith that they could do that between Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes? And I'll say this like I've been saying every week. I get that Trick Williams is now a babyface, but what does that mean? Who is Trick Williams now on the main roster? We still don't know. There was some tension between him and Lil Yachty this week, I guess, but that was about all we really got from what exactly is making Trick Williams tick on the main roster. In fifth place, I put NXT. It was a down week for NXT for me in general. I don't really even have much to say about it. I feel like Mason Rook got more screen time, which is fine. I like him more than others seem to when it comes to social media yapping. But I don't really think anything on NXT stood out necessarily that I really even have in my notes to talk about. I feel like everything just didn't really hit this past week. And I don't really care about Dark State, which was our main event storyline. They kind of broke up a little bit. Well, they beat up one member of Dark State, but I'm like, it's not really something I'm invested in. So yeah, NXT was pretty damn boring this past week. In fourth place, I put WWE Raw, which is also down. I already did my review on Raw last week, so if you really want a detailed version, you could go see that. The real only highlight was Brock Lesnar already returning from his fake retirement, beating down Obafemi with multiple F5s. It seems odd. I'll talk about it a little later at the end of this video with Eric Bischoff's comments on it, but like, I was asking for a swerve, and they at least gave me that. But everything else on Raw continues to be mediocre at best. It really just feels like they're going through the motions. In third place is AEW Dynamite, which is technically up 2 spots for me. It was another long Dynamite. It was Dynamite plus Collision again on Wednesday night, because I don't think there was a Collision on Saturday. At least I didn't see one. So anytime AEW has a longer show, I worry, because I just feel like Tony Khan's going to phone some things in. But he didn't really phone things in this week. Maybe it's because they had a pay-per-view this weekend too that he had to sell. The highlights for me were Ciampa and Mark Briscoe having their Anything Goes match. This match had been set up well over the past few weeks, especially on Collision the week before. It was, kind of a typical AEW hardcore match though, but I think both competitors do well in that kind of match, so it worked for me. A low light was that Willow Nightingale's injured, had to give up her title, so that sucks for her. But another highlight was the AEW Continental title eliminator, Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly, where they kind of went to a time limit draw. That led to a rematch on the pay-per-view that didn't go 20 minutes, even though it was billed as they need extra time. Now, nobody needed extra time on a long-ass AEW pay-per-view event, but still, I thought they set up that rematch well. I don't know if it was needed, though, at the pay-per-view with what ended up happening. Of course, MJF and Darby Allin kind of sold the tickets to Double or Nothing, in my opinion. I think they were our top guys over these past couple of months to make Double or Nothing such a hot crowd, selling a lot of tickets. So I like their stuff going on at the event as well. And they finally booked Will Ospreay right on Dynamite, where he looked more like a killer, which fits his storyline with the Death Riders. So it did have some good stuff on Dynamite, even though I would say half of the long show was kind of boring too. In second place, I have JCW Lunacy. This was my first place last week. It was not quite as entertaining as the week before. There was none of the drug addict storyline going on this past week on JCW. It was also a live event, but there still was highlights. I enjoyed the women's match. J-Rod and Alice Crowley are fun to watch, even though it ended with some Russo booking where there was interference. J-Rod's old partner attacking her, costing her the match, costing her to look like she lost the title to Big L, but then the referee reversed the decision because of the interference. We got a lot of follow-up on Big Vito, who has been doing this mafia storyline that I think is really entertaining to me. I've said a lot these past few weeks doing these rankings when it comes to JCW that Big Vito is so entertaining to me. They are trying to get these other characters back into the family, although the way they're doing it is by beating them down, kidnapping them in the back of a car, handcuffing them in the ring and beating them down. But it's working. I think Vito is a good heel in JCW. And this is what Russo was talking about when you need to be putting heat on your heels. We have this group with Vito and his nephew where the heat is going. Another highlight is this Father Bronson dude, who is, I think, very interesting in JCW, where he goes around with his little flowers to the audience. Seems to me to be like a cult leader. I think that's the vibe they're going for, even though then he's putting everyone down in the audience like a typical heel. He had this match against Facade, who had been getting into it with the backstage announcer Mac Davis for weeks now. And that led to Mac Davis upset with him in this episode, coming out to interfere in this match, even hitting Facade. And then later, Mac Davis gets a beatdown from Facade. So everybody has a storyline in JCW, like I've been saying, for the most part. And I think that is what works. The ending was also Vince Russo getting involved with a match. It wasn't really him in a match, but he had set up this mystery opponent for the character Jeeves, and it turned out to be Vince Russo. from behind in his Bash by the Beach San Francisco Giants jersey, and then he beat down Jeeves from behind with his baseball bat. So kind of WCW Vince Russo returning here. I don't know if that's a great thing, but I was entertained. It's an entertaining show. I mean, it's an easy watch, entertaining show. Yeah, the storylines get a lot more time than the wrestling, though. Number 1 was AAA. I think Lucha Libre AAA is still the best thing to watch. It's only an hour. We have Rey Mysterio as the new general manager. He set up a match with Laredo Kid and Rey Fenix that I thought was well, with Rey Fenix having to cheat to win, which then Rey sets up a rematch. We have a babyface GM here, which WWE and WWE adjacent loves right now, but I think it works with Rey Mysterio in AAA, obviously. And then, obviously, this hot segment with the Americanos still going strong, where they were supposed to keep their hands off each other if they were going to have their mask versus mask match, and they didn't, but Rey Mysterio is still going to make that match happen. This obviously has some big things happening in the US too, with an arrest last week with El Grande Americano getting arrested because his girlfriend was being harassed by someone that they were going to call ICE on her, which I think just makes him a bigger babyface in Mexico. So that's still hot. It's still the easiest watch of any of these wrestling shows because it's only an hour, and it actually is good. They have some hot angles when they want to. I do quickly want to talk about Saturday night's main event and Double or Nothing, but I'm running out of time. This is going longer than I want it to. I will say Saturday night's main event was a flop. I mean, surprise, surprise. I mean, I like the fact that they focused on the lesser titles, I guess you can say, that doesn't get a lot of focus. But like every single title match that they did have, which was 4 of them, there was no title change. And I feel like by the end of the event, it felt like a waste of time. Plus, Sol Ruca had another botch. She botched her Soul Snatcher again. They might need to find a new finishing move for her on the main roster, because if she keeps botching it on the main roster, she's never going to look good. So even though I liked how they made Sol Ruca and her botching and her maybe not being ready for the main roster a part of her storyline, it's now starting to look bad for her if she's going to keep botching. The Penta and Ethan Page match was the best match of the night, but I feel like if there was any title to change hands tonight, it was that one. Because now with Ethan Page losing, he might just become another delusional heel on the main roster, where he has this big ego, he talks a lot of shit, but he can't back up what he's talking. And we have enough of those in wrestling right now. It's not a real heel, like I've been talking about this whole video. Double or Nothing had its great moments. Way too long of an event for me. AEW's pay-per-views are ridiculous when it comes to that, and I feel like it really loses momentum every time for me personally. The highlight for me was the first match, maybe because it was just the first match. It was able to come out hot right off the bat. It was FTR versus Copeland and Cage in a I Quit match. They went all out, a fiery table, a spike with nails, but it didn't have a lot of bleeding like a lot of AEW matches like this do, which I think actually made it different. So I thought that was a good match. Okada and Takeshita pissed me off, It's New Japan style, I get it. But it's a style I don't like, though. So much no-selling in this match. So many kickouts in this match. It's New Japan style. For me, it's the style Nick hates. So, way too many moves that don't matter. And they booked Takeshita to lose to Darby Allin in one of his many title defenses over the past few weeks, which took away, in my opinion, from the storyline in the first place. And yeah, he gets the big win here over Okada. But Tony Khan's booking is so inconsistent, so we'll see how that goes. We also had Kyle Fletcher return after this match, which is a good thing. Any other highlights? I don't love that Moxley got his win back over Kyle O'Reilly. I guess that is what he needed, though. He books himself like he's Triple H. He needs his wins back, because I thought it was a good storyline that Kyle O'Reilly is the person that has Jon Moxley's number. But that's now over. Ospreay and Samoa Joe was fine. Will Ospreay got his big win here. I thought that Swerve versus Bandito was very obvious because to me, if you're an ROHer on the main roster, you're only going to go so far. And yeah, Athena won her match because it's Athena. She's going to lose eventually, though. Bandito, of course, was always going to lose here. I felt like the Women's World Championship match was kind of unneeded. And it's a Tony Khan booking problem. Like, he wants his women matches on the card, but no effort goes into booking them. No effort. So I felt like this match was thrown together in the first place. There was no real interest coming into this match. It was just to get Thekla on the card and to win the match. But like, this is the reason why AEW events are so long. AEW and WWE need to find a balance. WWE and their 5-match events, not great. But AEW and their 6-hour events, also not great. And there's so much going on before you finally get to the main event with Darby Allin and MJF that they had to follow a Stadium Stampede match, which is just chaos. How do you follow that in the main event? They did their best to do so, though, and I think they are the ones that sold the tickets here. But if you go back to how the crowd was great, I do think the crowd was the best part of the night. I just want to say, hot crowd all night, even to the main event. However, if you go back to the pre-show when MJF interrupted Mick Foley and how wild the crowd was pretty exhausted by this main event. I would say only half as loud for this main event from where they were on the pre-show. And then MJF wins. I'm fine with that. I didn't expect him to get his head shaved bald. But we end this show with a Kevin Knight attack on a stretcher Darby Allin. And I was just kind of like, okay. It was very perplexing because I feel like Kevin Knight was doing great as an up-and-coming babyface. Why are we turning him heel right now? I don't think that's going to be good for Kevin Knight. Maybe they'll surprise me, but I think it's actually going to be worse for Kevin Knight than better for Kevin Knight. We'll see where Kevin Knight is at the end of the summer coming off of this heel turn. Will he be in a better place because of Tony Khan's random booking here? Or will he be in a worse place? Remind me of that come August or September if I'm still doing these videos. Anyway, I had more I wanted to talk about, but I went too long today, so that is where I will stop today with my rankings and with my thoughts on this weekend's events. I mean, Double or Nothing was better than Saturday night's main event. Not hard to do so, though. But the easiest wrestling to watch, if you want to actually be entertained, is the hour-long Lucha Libre AAA and JCW Lunacy.